There's a bewildering array of cutters on the market to choose from, many proclaiming to be professional tools, and prices ranging from very little to an awful lot. CJ Beaders have over 30 different types available, so which one do you choose? Well, this video is intended to help you choose the cutters you need, and of course you may need more than one pair. There is no one tool to cut all wires, I'm afraid. It's also worth pointing out that you cannot resharpen the edges of cutters. They do have a limited life and no cutter will last forever. There are a couple of questions you need to ask yourself when choosing cutters. Firstly, what do you want to cut? It may seem like a daft question, but not all wires are the same. The three most common a jewellery maker will want to cut are multi-strand beading wire, which may be very fine strands, solid craft or wrapping wires, typically plated copper, solid silver or stainless steel, that come in various degrees of hardness and of course different diameters, and thirdly, hardened tempered wire, normally known as remembrance or memory wire. Secondly, we need to decide what the ends of the cut wire want to look like. Different cutters have different shaped edges in order to cut wire in different ways, and the different shape of cut requires a different shape of head to the cutters, which may mean access to what you want to cut may not be as easy, as we will see later. There are many different names given to cutters, such as flush cutters, side cutters, dual flush cutters and more, and we'll mention some of them as we go. Let's start by looking at what you want to cut first of all, starting with multi-strand beading wire. And of course not all beading wires are the same. Starting with the low end 3-strand tiger tail and going up to the professional 49-strand wire, which has incredibly fine strands. With such wire you require very fine, very sharp edges, and ideally you need to get in very close to your finished work to cut it as close as you can to a crimp or other finding. For this application we would use a fine tip flush cutter. The head of the cutter needs to be fine enough to get into the tight spaces, and the edges need to be sharp enough to cut the finest of strands. Something like a Xuron Model 170 will do the job, as will the Xuron 410 or Xuron 9200. But what's the difference between the three? Well, the 170 and the 410 are identical in shape and size, but the 410 has harder edges, which means they will keep cutting those finer strands for longer. The 9200 has a thicker head. It is more durable and lasts longer, but the thicker head may limit access. So my recommendation would be to buy a pair of the Model 410 and keep them aside purely for cutting your beading wire. If you only cut beading wire occasionally though, then go for the cheaper Model 170. Now let's take a look at cutting plated or solid wires, such as those for findings or wrapping wires, and now is perhaps a good time to talk about the different types of cutter shapes. We've already mentioned flush cutters and their purpose to give a flush cut on one side of the wire, normally the piece in your work, the other side of wire being your waste. This diagram shows the profile, and the cutter works through cutting on the flush side and leveraging the waste out of the way, leaving one flush surface and one angled surface. The edges of the cutters will rub against each other and eventually wear, and it's worth mentioning at this point the unique micro shear action that the Xuron cutters have. Their patented design means that the cutter edges overlap ever so slightly, meaning they do not rub against each other so much. So consequently they tend to last longer. However, the last bit of the cutting action actually shears the material in two, hence the name micro shear. If you look at the cut wire under strong magnifier, you can see a minute step in the wire's profile, really too small to be of any concern and certainly not visible under normal conditions. If you need a general pair of cutters in the workshop for cutting findings and solid wire, except for memory wire that is, then you can use flush cutters or side cutters, both of which come in lots of sizes and price ranges. Side cutters work by squeezing wire together with two triangular shaped jaws. They are often cheaper to make than quality flush cutters, so tend to be cheaper to buy. However, they do leave you with pointed ends on both sides of the cut wire, and consequently flush cutters are a better choice when making jewellery. If you are using mainly thin wires or cutting small findings, then the smaller cutters mentioned before will do. But if you use wires of all sizes, then the Xuron Model 2175 is a great, affordable, robust pair of flush cutters for general use. If you need a little more precision and better access to your work, then go for the Model 9200 with tapered jaws. If you need something not quite as delicate but still require precision, then the model 9100 is the one to go for. Its oval shaped head gives it much more strength, a great cutter if you need lots of jump rings for instance. There are occasions when you would like to have a flush cut on both sides of the wire. As you can see from the previous diagram, flush cutters only give a flush cut on one side of the wire and side cutters give you two pointed sides. In order to have two square edges, you would need to use a double flush cutter or hard wire cutter. These work by shearing the wire apart, like a miniature bolt cutter. However, in order to perform this action, the head of the tool has to be quite thick and very strong, making it very difficult to get into tight spaces really close up to your work. We stock a smaller Zuron Model 691 flush cutter, which works well on half-hardened soft wires, and a larger Model 2193, which can also be used to cut hardened wire such as memory wire. So if you want to cut findings or wire, need two square edges and do not need to be really close up to your work, then a double flush cutter such as the 691 or the 2193 is the cutter to go for. Finally, cutting memory wire or toughen wire. Whatever you do, do not use any of the cutters mentioned before, other than the 2193. Memory wire cutters are specially designed for cutting hard wires. Using other cutters will result in breaking the jaws of the cutters and in some cases leading to high velocity bits of steel flying across the room, absolutely lethal. Which brings us to the final remark. It's always recommended to wear safety glasses when using cutting tools. Small bits of wire can do a lot of damage to your eyes, so use cutters safely and wear safety glasses. Thanks for watching this video today. If you want any of the tools, they're available from CJ Beaders, and if you have any questions regarding this video or would like to suggest another topic for discussion, then drop us an email to sales@cjbeaders.com. Thanks for watching.